an agile coach and trainer and consultant, and I'm the founder of Prime Project, a small agency that is helping small and mid-sized companies to transform how teams collaborate and how the work gets done. I'm an agile practitioner since 2010, and actually, I've completed, like, I've worked with more than 50 companies and coached and guided, mentored more than 200 teams and trained more than 3,000 individuals on agile matters. The spheres are really different. Like, most of the time, it has been IT and software development, like working with startups, but also, doing a lot of workshops for banking sphere and for agencies that are providing professional services. So I have certificates from Scrum Alliance and Scrum Work, and I've been a speaker at several, like Scrum related global conferences and gatherings. So that's it in short. And just let's move. I just want to start, like continuing the talk of Ari. It's really hard, but let me do that. So I really want to start with the Shuhari. Maybe most of you know about this, but this approach has been used in martial arts. And the idea behind this approach and this philosophy, let's say, is that usually when you start, let's say in Aikido, when you start learning it, you have to know how the rules work. What are the steps that you need to make? What are the katas you need to make sure that you know how to use Aikido? And that's true. Then when you master the steps, the paths and everything, and then you start this self-recognition, what you can do best, what is not working, and you start, innovation process. So you are starting to bend rules, and then on the third stage, when you have already, you have already this understanding of what is working and what is not, and you know the rules perfectly, then you start creating your new rules, so you start, this creative technique process where you are creating new rules. And this approach is perfectly used when you are going this agile adoption, or when you are implementing Scrum. So as Ari said, you cannot skip, especially when you are just starting, you cannot skip like events or artifacts or clear role definitions in Scrum when you are just starting, because you need to understand, you need to make this a constant process. You need to try this, you need this experimenting. So the changes that, most people do to Scrum framework, especially in the beginning, are, sometimes they are ruining the actual Scrum. And that is why I always say, try, implementing as it is, do the experiments in the process, understand what is working for you and what is not. And then, come up with your own frameworks, with your own decisions. You can always combine solutions. That's what Agile is for, you can find the best way that is working for your particular company or team. So let me just, do an introduction of what I'm going to talk about. So I have identified, and most of you might have the same approach, how the process of improvement works. Actually, we always try to identify the problem, when we're just starting, we have a company or we have a team, and there are things that are not working. So we try to understand, like, what is not working. So that's the first step. Then let's say we go and read in the books on internet, we talk to experts, and then we find a solution that, in our case, let's say, is Scrum, because we are going to talk about Scrum. So we just take it that Scrum is our solution, and many companies see that actually Scrum fits perfectly in their environment and it can help them, to resolve their problems. What we do, let's say we implemented Scrum, right? We did all the work that is needed. Then we are observing actually the implementation, And we are trying to understand, okay, what are the gaps? What are the things that we are missing? What is not working, you know? Or what is working? What is good for us, you know? After this step, then we try to explore new strategies, you know, working strategies, like working approaches that other, for example, other companies do, or, you know, solutions that are not like part of the Scrum, but actually can be combined with Scrum perfectly and can help boost the Scrum and bring it on new level. And then once we do our research, our homework, then we start adapting the learning that we have gained through this research into practice. And the interesting thing is that, first of all, this cyclic approach, it actually goes from bottom to top, because the more you go in your journey, the more you know, the more information you know. So your observation and your decision making is becoming like more thorough and more on spot, let's say. And also at the same time, you repeat this process constantly. So it's kind of an iteration approach. So you constantly repeat this process in every step of your workflow or company work or teamwork. So that is why the more you try, the more you master. Okay. So let's just start with, with the level one, like identifying the problem. So let's just examine a typical situation in a product development company. You know, how do we come up with this solution of implementing Scrum? Okay, so what is the problem? Okay, let's say this is our process. We have stakeholders or product team or management that have this idea, they do their idea verification. They have some processes of analysis of cost and benefit. Then they might do, risk analysis. They do the estimations. Then they prepare the documentation for this product, for example. And there is a review process that might go back and forth, all among the management and, product teams or stakeholders. So and based on that, they create the requirements, fix the budget, for example, create the timelines, whatever, allocate resources, etc. And then only after that, they pass this, to the implementation team. And the implementation team is usually organized in a way that we have like divisions, created based on expertise, right? Like design division or development or QA or whatever it is, like a typical waterfall, process. So what happens there is, let's say we do this preparation work for 6 months or for a year or anything. This is just a number that we really put too much effort into creating, this product requirements documentation. And when it comes to the implementation team, what do you think? What do we require from them? We just say them, please deliver it now, or even yesterday, we did it yesterday. So, there is like the preparation work is like 6 months or a year, and then just we want the implementation team to do it really fast. We want it ASAP. So that's a real problem. We are providing the requirements to the team, and then we are constantly demanding more and more work from them. So as a result, what do we have? We have a bunch of features that the implementation team is creating, let's just call it a development team. So they are creating a bunch of features, releasing it to the market, and then we understand that actually the market did not need that features. There is only one thing that they see value in. And so what do we have in this situation? It's like overproduction. We did too much work, unnecessary work. So the second situation is, again, just imagine the same situation, but as a result, the development team created one piece of functionality or one increment. And then when we release it to the market, we see that actually market needed more. It's not enough. Right now the competition is so high that you have to think carefully what are the features that you are including or in your MVPs, for example. So I remember then I just started, it was really enough to have this value proposition thing, to include it into your product and then to start experimenting. But right now, if you know, if your product is really, if your product is really a complex one, and you just want to do something better than the others, then you might need to include all of the features that the other competitors have, plus your value proposition. So there is also this kind of situation, So what do we have here? Under production. And then the third scenario, again, within the same situation, is that, let's say, the development team created what is needed, like created, again, some features that are not more, not less, but then, attention, the market is silent, it seems like we created what is needed, but they are not buying it, actually. So this is like maybe the worst situation. But again, I wouldn't say so, because you are getting really, really a lot of learning from this kind of situations. So when, in this case, we have a not needed production, and this creates a lot of tension among, like the management and the teams. And, we start blaming each other, like, and maybe some of you have seen or have been in this kind of situation. Then, so what do, like, based on this, so what do companies usually need to improve their product development? They do their homework, they do their research, and they understand that, they have to deal with the changes really fast. They have to accelerate their delivery process. They have to increase team productivity. They have to make sure that the management and, the development team are working together, and that besides that, they are providing a quality product, and they can do some predictability, and again, we need to see how the project is going. We have to see we have to have the visibility, and to respond to market conditions, to deal with risks like easier, and of course, to have a good culture where people are feeling really good, that they want to create something really valuable for the company. And so based on that, actually, these are the reasons why most of the time Scrum is implemented, because Scrum is answering all of these, questions, and is providing solutions to, to resolve this kind of issues. And so we are applying, let's say, Agile and Scrum to address the mentioned issues. So this is in our spiral. This is the step 2, applying the solution. So we have the Scrum framework, a lightweight one, but really not that easy to implement and master. But the idea is that we want to work in small iterations to deliver faster the value to our customer, and to inspect the process, to gather data, and to adapt the knowledge, the new knowledge that we gain to our process. So we have like division of roles, so that, it is clear who is doing what. We have strict events that are controlling, our whole process. And then we have artifacts that we are working on to make sure that the things that we are creating are actually valuable and with a quality. And of course, like, Scrum is based on Agile values and on empiricism, where we have like the transparency of the whole process, inspection, adaptation. And there is also lean thinking. I'm going to talk about it later on. So let's just see how it works in practice. What do we have? Let's say we applied Scrum, and what do we have? So again, we have the management that, they are really happy about having a solution. Then we have developers or development team who should be like, we say, okay, they are self-managing, they should be like cross-functional. So most of the companies, they divide the teams into feature teams or product teams. So they just take the focus of product-centric companies. Besides that, we have the product owner role. So the person who is the value maximizer, who is making sure that, all of the customer requirements or stakeholder requirements are taken into account, doing this experimenting in the discovery phase and also implementation phase, and someone who is creating the product backlog where we have all our, items to work on that are prioritized and have a business value. And then we have the third role, that is the Scrum Master, who is actually, someone who knows most about Agile and Scrum, someone who is more like a psychologist, who understands and sees the problem, who is helping the teams to resolve this problem and to make sure that they are growing, as a team, and that the delivery is there. And what else do we have? So we have constant collaboration between all of these people. So the communication here is the key. So to make sure that the information is right and the information flows are right, and that we, through effective communication, will resolve issues much easier. So in terms of the process, we do as much preparation work as needed to start the work, from idea verification until the backlog. We make sure that this part is really short, because we do not want to, spend, let's say, 6 months in identifying something that the customers do not need. So that's a continuous discovery process where we are constantly experimenting. That is why we just focus on what makes real value and put it into our backlog, based on which we are doing our planning. We are defining the work that we want to work on within the sprint, like the sprint backlog. And then we are doing this work within, let's say, within the sprints, like most commonly people use like 2-week sprints, but it can be 1 week, 3 weeks, like 1 month is the maximum. So you have to make sure how fast do you want to, move. And then there is also this constant information loop from market to the company through all of the members, and going back and forth to make sure that we are creating something that the customers want, and that our work is delivering, this something really fast to the market. Okay. Let's, like, the step 3 is observing implementation gaps. Okay, we have the solution. Now let's observe what is working and what is not working, and understand what are the wrong implementations and misconceptions that we have during the way, So the same situation, right? But what actually can work wrong? I have seen this in many, many companies, that instead of, like, the product owner, let's take him, like, instead of being with the Scrum team or within the Scrum team, they usually become the intermediaries between the management or stakeholders and the team. So they just take the information from here and bring it there, take it from here, bring it there, or take the ideas from, or the ideas or from the stakeholders and management, and then just turning them into epics and user stories and putting them into backlog, and then making sure that the Scrum events are there, and the team is planning work from the backlog. So that's it. That's all that they do. And really, there are a lot of product owners that see this as a problem. And also from team side, sometimes they feel like the product owner is not available for that. On the other side, we have the developers that need to be, self-managing and need to be cross-functional, but still we have a lot of dependencies, because like people say, okay, I'm just doing front end, and it's the backend issue, backend team issue or backend specialist issue. So, you know, I cannot do any work before him, or, you know, things like that. And then also you might still hear things like, okay, you know, just give me a task to do, assign something to me. So the team leads might still do this assignment of tasks for their teams, you know, not giving them this freedom to pull the tasks themselves, or to, you know, organize stuff. Or, you know, I have seen in a lot of cases that team leads are actually doing the researches, and then whatever they find that is, you know, that is working, then they just give to the team and say, okay, just implement this. So, you know, this kind of problems. And then we have the Scrum Master, who actually should be, you know, the Yoda kind of, or, you know, someone who has the wisdom, you know, who has the understanding, who has this, you know, coaching skills, and who has the empathicity, and, um, you know, like this love for people, for, you know, creating this environment of productivity and efficiency and everything. But at the end, we have someone who is running the Scrum events, making sure that everyone is there and nobody is late. So, you know, someone with the Scrum guide, like with a book, and just going back and forth and doing the administrative support. Or even worse, you know, opening tasks for the team in Jira, or administering Jira. And that's, you know, like her role. So again, what we have as a result, again, this preparation work still might be like for 6 months. Because again, this information and back and forth, we are still not ready to get used of, you know, old habits. But what we have now is like 2 week sprints. So like the developers and the Scrum Master are constantly in this loop. You know, the product owner might be or might not be there. And then we actually concentrate on finishing the work without, you know, understanding, without having the understanding of, okay, what was the impact on the market, or what was the market's feedback on what we created. And from the other side, management is constantly pushing for, okay, give us more velocity, you know, do more work, etc., etc. So again, the same situation where even if we create something like at the end of the sprint, or, you know, at the end of the release, like before the release, then we might see the same situation, like underproduction, overproduction, and not in needed production. So this is where, you know, a lot of companies say that, okay, Scrum is not working for us, you know, it's not working. Or even very, very interesting case recently, I had a talk with a very known company. I'm not going to say the names, but and the woman, the HR, was looking for a project manager. Okay. And but then when we started talking, I understood that like the word that they need is more like a Scrum Master role, and they were doing Scrum actually. And then I asked, okay, then why are you looking for a project manager? Because like the work seems to be a good one for a Scrum Master. And then she said, you know, very interesting thing. She said, I feel like the Scrum Master, you know, is not enough role for us, because we are a product centric company, and the Scrum Masters are just, you know, running these events and things like that, and making sure that Scrum events are there. But I want someone to be more on the side of the producers, you know, like someone who is taking care of the product, also of the delivery, who is also understanding the value of the product and making sure that the team is moving towards that. So I have the feeling that the project manager is, you know, a better role for that. You know, so do you see this kind of misconceptions? That's because, you know, we do not perfectly understand like what the Scrum Master should do, and we do not, you know, apply thoroughly the agile values in each and every step of our work process. So in the situation with the distributed teams, that's also the same situation. Okay, so the same thing is actually happening. I do not see any much difference in terms of like Scrum implementation or Agile thinking or whatever in distributed teams and on-site teams, because you approach the situation in the same way. The difference here is, okay, that's the same situation. The difference here is that actually that even if we have Jira or whatever, any other tool that we are using, boards to make it visible, because that's core for the distributed teams to have a common place where, you can just get to the information really fast. But the biggest problem here is that, as you see, the people are not there. They are invisible. I mean, we do not spend time on like quality communication. We are more focused on what do we see on our board, and we forget about the fact that actually people are doing this work. And there is where we do not have alignment. And as a reason of that, again, we create something that, might, will create confusions in the market. So that's the biggest problem with distributed teams. Okay, and as a result, maybe some of you have heard this term. We have kind of a zombie Scrum where we do everything as per book, but nothing is working. So then we go on the third level. Okay, exploring working strategies and approaches, because evolving a process is a normal practice. That's something that every company does, and we should never be afraid of that. And there are really many practices that can be applied together with Scrum, to boost it. So first one, let's just start with working with people to enable them. Of course, there are a lot of models and a lot of approaches, but there are two main that can be used really easy, not that hard, in terms of, working with people and understanding where they are and why they behave so. So the first one is the Tuckman model created by Bruce Tuckman, like in 1965. So, and this model is actually researching the group dynamics. If you understand, where your team actually is, then you can also prepare a better plan or a better approach of how to lead them where you want them to be. For example, if they are just forming as a team, and you just go there and say, you have to have an agile mindset, or you have to, I don't know, be self-organized. So starting from the day you are self-managing, just go and do your work and bring us value. Then that would be a complete disaster, because they are just forming. They do not know what to do with this agile values. So here maybe some more direction, here the leaders might be more decisive, to make sure, so here is where we have to follow the rules and things like that. But when your team is performing, which means they are mature team, they know how to do things, and they are creating the value, they are performing, then you do not need to, like managing them or supervising them or giving directions. They are the ones who know how to do it. So you are more like, stepping aside, just creating this environment of support and leadership that they need. And regarding the SCARF model, again, created by David Rock in 2008, again, very interesting model to understand also, to understand social triggers. Why do people behave this or that way? For example, sometimes when people just resist, and they say, sometimes I have heard this from project managers saying, why do we implement Scrum? Or why do we do these meetings? We have to concentrate on, just creating the project chapter or things like that, because these are the things that they know they can do and they understand. And then you say, okay, just stop, being a manager. Okay, your micromanagement responsibilities are given to the developers, so stop doing that. And then this person is kind of perplexed. So if you understand that, there might be, that this person is afraid to lose his status or certainty in terms of what the future will bring if we just, recreate the whole, processes within the company, then again, your approach as a leader might be different, and or even as a team member. And also, I from my practice, really, a lot of mentorship, guidance, and education is needed for the Scrum teams to really get most of the Scrum. Because no matter what we read, our perceptions are different. People are objective. So we get the information as we feel it from the place where we are now. So if we have this, for example, status uncertainty issues, then we might want to skip some of the things that needs to be done on Scrum because we are afraid to lose our status or lose our position, But that is why all of these roles, and even the stakeholders really need this guidance and mentorship. And we also have to be really careful with the feedback because, providing feedback at every step is also not something really good to do, because if people are not asking for that, then providing them feedback might do even worse work. The second step would be, let's work with the Scrum processes. Let's inspect and adapt. So let's just focus on what Scrum says: empiricism, the three pillars, empiricism, inspection, and adaptation. This is really important to make sure that the whole our process is based on these pillars. Let's start from the sprint planning, okay? Usually sprint planning fails when we do not have a refined backlog. So we do not dedicate enough time, to go through our backlog, understand like what we need and what is like a waste of time. We do not add enough details to our user stories, for example, or we might not ask enough questions to understand what is needed, or we might not have some criteria towards which to, compare if we are good or not. Then I've seen that many teams are skipping actually setting the sprint goal. They are more focused on the sprint backlog, which is wrong. Sprint backlog can evolve because kind of sprint backlog is our forecast, but the sprint goal is our goal, like an objective that we want to reach. And it is much easier if you are following the goal, no matter how you are doing the work and the initiatives to reach it. It's creating this creative and innovative environment if you are more focused on the goal rather on, what you have committed to, like in terms of this task, and that task. Also, do not skip your why, what, and how during your planning. Why the sprint is valuable, what we need to create within the sprint, with our sprint goal, and how we are going to do that, actually. Creating our action plan, how we are going to do that, making kind of a small plan for that, for the sprint. Again, communication is the key. And we should never also forget about, velocity, capacity things, because sometimes what I've seen is that, okay, there are 8 people on the team, we are, for example, our velocity is 20 story points. But then someone is ill, we have scarcity of resources, but the management is still, is asking for more and more velocity, which is, again, kind of like very, very nervous situation also for the team. So we have to make sure that our resource management is really on track. And the Scrum Master should facilitate, never lead this event. This event is not about you, but it's about all of you as a Scrum team. Working within the sprint, collaborative ownership of stories. So again, if we go back to what I said earlier, like team leads assigning tasks to the team members. And then every member is saying, okay, this task is my responsibility and the other task is not. But this is a wrong approach. If we want to create this collaborative, self-managing thing within the team, then they have to have collective ownership for everything that goes within the sprint. Daily inspection of the plan for delivering the work, just, understanding where we are. Again, Scrum Master should facilitate impediment removal, not do that themselves. This is, again, wrong approach, because if you are someone who is, as I said, like the admin support, or someone who is just running back and forth, like, do you want a massage? Okay, let me just do it for you. Do you want a coffee? Yeah, I can bring it for you, because I'm the impediment resolver. I can do everything for my team. So if you are in this role, that you won't be able, to last in this role for a long time, because at some point you will feel like, okay, but I do not want to be an admin support as a Scrum Master. Then I rather switch to a project manager or someone else who has more authority, for example. This is also the situation that I've seen so many times. So you have to make sure that you are creating this environment for your team where, the dependencies will be less, the impediments will be less. Again, this does not mean that you won't do that, because in the beginning, where we have the forming stage of the team, you might do a lot of work, but you have to make sure that you teach them and guide them how to do that themselves. Focus on definition of done. Again, done for me does not mean done for you. So you have to, and like as a whole team, you have to understand what done means to you. And this is your commitment of your increment that you are creating. Dedicating time for investigation and preparation. Never fill your sprint with just stories, never do that, because you have a lot of work that is actually non-value adding, but it is important to do, like the meetings, updating documentation, I don't know, doing some spikes, investigation, doing your researches, doing preparation for the review, etc. Daily Scrum. Okay, as we start, let's say like the teams that are just starting with Scrum, that's okay to start the daily stand up with the 3 questions, like, what did I do yesterday, what I'm planning to do today, or what are the impediments. But the most important thing is actually that we have to inspect our work towards sprint goal. So if you need to ask other types of questions, then do that. It's kind of a free event. I mean, that's event for the team itself. It's not necessary just to focus on these 3 questions, but just to inspect your process towards your sprint goal. Tracking, for example, where you are, like using burn down charts, keeping the time box. And if you need additional discussions, just move it from the daily Scrum, so that it does not happen that you have 1 hour daily stand up, daily Scrum, like every day. Scrum Masters do not lead this. Again, I've seen many Scrum Masters like standing in front of the team, in front of the whiteboard, and just asking everyone, Tom, it's your turn, then. David, it's your turn, Stand behind your team so that they do not report to you, okay? Keep it a close event and create this safety. Then sprint review. Okay, make sure that the presentation is working. First of all, do your homework, do this preparation. Take the ownership as a team. Start your presentation with, defining what is done, not where you are in terms of your sprint goal, your predictability. Do not go down into technical discussions. Then instead of that, dedicate more time in discussing like roadmap, release, milestone, budget maybe, or, collaboration with your stakeholders, or maybe someone from marketing has joined, ask them for numbers, like what are the customer feedbacks that they have, what are the future that they see, what we should add to the backlog, for our next sprint. So inspecting like where we are and where we are going is more important than the, than just focusing on the demo. And the sprint retrospective, again, Scrum Master should really shine here. I mean, you should do your homework. You should have pre-event preparation and post-event preparation. This is important. You have to have a lot of games and activities prepared. You have to feel your team. Like, okay, the team is, let's say the team is really stressed. Then, going into the retro and asking them like, okay, what was wrong, and constantly focusing on the wrong thing can create the opposite. They might not want to improve at all. So it's better, to feel your team, to understand like what's there, like what is it in their mind, and maybe you might want to do team building, like a very light team building activity to raise their spirit, and next time you might want to talk about like things that they might want to improve. So fill your team, do a mix of visuals, writing, speaking, group work, so that it's really engaging for the team. Keep it a close event. Again, create safety. Start the next retro with improvement actions, if there are any, so that it's not just, talking and talking, but it's focusing on acting and on continuous improvement. The third thing is boosting Scrum with other solutions. Okay, the first one that I really love, whenever you have a new initiative, try to go back to basics. Try to map it with your agile values and principles, whether this initiative will bring you closer to these values or not. It's always helping. You can use, for example, you can use a lot of techniques here, like for continuous discovery, like design thinking if you want, or story mapping activities to define users and their journey. And there can be a lot of things. You can also, do a lot of limitation of the features that you are working on. So to make sure that the things that you are working on are the ones that are needed for the customers. And then you might want to, focus on building the right thing, like lean thinking, for example, Okay, lean thinking is actually something that, comes from, Toyota production system. So this term was first introduced by James Womack and Daniel Jones. And the main idea here is that you have to go and see yourself, like what is actually the customer value, and you should identify this. And then you have to create this stream where you will be able to create this process, where you will be able to create this value for your customer. You have to create it as a flow, like, for example, using a Kanban or whatever, like a strict process, a visible process. And then you might want to use this tool system, to make sure that, people are taking their tasks from upstream, and, they just do enough work at this very stage that is needed, and not more, not less. And then once you create this process and you see that it is working and you create it, whatever you can, then you just do not stop there. You constantly improve it. So you plan, you do, you check and act, and you work on, waste reduction, you work on improving your process at every stage. And then there is also very interesting thing in building the thing right. Okay, Scrum, sometimes companies say, okay, Scrum is not covering the whole company processes, and then I go and say, okay, but why do you want to do that? I mean, let's say Scrum cannot answer you like how you should do the HR, right? It says like these are the values. So for example, the HR might know what is agile. They might want to use it even within their Scrum, but in terms of expertise, this is your part. And that's why, for example, with this idea of setting, of using OKRs, setting the objectives and using it together with Scrum might do a better work if we want, the whole company to be product centric and to concentrate on one common goal. So we have the product goal, right? Then we can have like our objectives that will have like clear metrics, how we are going to measure these metrics. Then we can have, like hypotheses. So what are the initiatives that we want to have or implement to make sure that, our objectives are met. And only based on that, we are creating our sprint goals, and, we are defining the backlog, yeah, et cetera, et cetera. So Here, also using evidence-based management is also very useful. And this term is actually coming from medicine, where the decisions had to be made based on critical thinking and the best available evidence. And so here we might want to use it as well. So we might want to use those kind of metrics that are tracking value. For example, lead time, net promoter score, so or revenue per employees or anything like that. So things that are tracking the value that we are creating. And then we might also want to, for example, to use Kanban boards with Scrum, which is also a very good solution. And we might want to track cycle time and lead time instead, to understand, like, okay, how long does it take for our production from start to end? Or how long does it take when the developers start the work until we deliver it into the market? And of course, also there is a lot of focus nowadays on DevOps and continuous integration processes, etc. So adapting this learning into practice. So let's see what we just talked about, how this works like in practice. So what do we have? We have this continuous discovery process where we constantly experiment with our hypothesis and demand. We do experimenting, we do analysis, and we do validation, based on which we create the backlog and we run our, like Scrum. But also by using Kanban, we are actually creating this upstream. So this process where the people can pull tasks from upstream. So that is why usually a lot of statuses in our process might be divided into doing and done. And then we might, pay attention to velocity, capacity, and put WIP limits, like work in progress limits, to all our, steps of work. For example, so to make sure that, we are just working on the things that really matter at this very moment, and that we are limiting the amount of work that we are taking into progress. And of course, we will have to focus on these three commitments, like product goal, sprint goal, and definition of them. And as you see, on team level, we might use Scrum with Kanban. In discovery phase, we might go with, more like with lean thinking, lean startup thinking, etc. And we track cycle time and lead time. So as you see, there is also, we can use like the DevOps, the value stream, and Kaizen. And as a result, we have this information cycling, from market to us, from us to market. So as a result, we create products that actually are needed for the market because we have already done our homework and we deliver value. And in the same situation, if we look from a people like side, we have like teams that are managing and cross-functional and self-managing, who are interacting with the business constantly because they are focused on the value, and people, and we respect people for what they do, and they continuously improve, really putting a lot of focus on Kaizen. On the side of the objectives, so let's say that we have 3 product areas, or that can be 3 different products. So how do we put these objectives? Okay, so first of all, I always say better focus on product outcomes, because it is much easier for the product team to understand what needs to be done if we describe it as a product outcome, than just to say it as, our objective is to increase revenue. If you say this to a product team, they really do not know what to do with that. Okay, we want to increase the revenue, but how do we do that? But if you say, let's say, we want the users to spend, let's say, 20 minutes in the system after they log in, because you have calculated that if the user spends 20 minutes in the system, then they will buy for sure something. So this will increase your revenue. So if you give it as this to the team, then they will go, because they understand it, because it's related to their product. They will go create the epics, user stories, etc. Then we combine it with product objectives, which have like these measures, like key metrics to track the value. And then all of this is combined by our like ultimate goal, which is the product goal. So this is like a vertical. On the horizontal side, okay, we have the sprint that each team, for example, is running, and then we might have like the team objectives here, which can be like velocity, plan for each completed, the defect rate. You might want to, track the technical debt, etc., etc. But all of these are combined under your sprint goal. So these usually are not the metrics that the management needs, because those are for teams, because you might want also to track the team health, by assessments, evaluations. So all of this is needed to complete the sprint goal. And the other things like the product outcomes and product objectives are needed for the whole company to see where you are going in terms of product. So these are things to remember. This is the final slide. So first of all, start with improving the ways of working. Focus on pre-commitments in Scrum. Focus on product teams as enablers. Constantly look back to Agile values in all your initiatives. Create product objectives and outcomes instead of business objectives. Use value stream and work in progress limitation. Form an Agile leadership team. Use measurable metrics to track value. Dedicate time for preparation and learning. And try to work on reducing the lead time. So the time when the request came from our user until we provided what he actually did it. So that's it. I hope that you will try, even if you are a beginner, you will try using this framework in your work if it works for you. If you are already advanced, hope you got some new information from this presentation, and really good luck. So if you have any questions, I'm ready to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, for this very, very interesting and inspiring presentation. So people, if you, as Anna said, if you have any question, now is the time. Or you can also think about this and talk to us later, of course. And we will see you in a couple of hours.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. And on another very
on another
interesting
event.
topic.
Yeah. That's
how to form an agile leadership team.
Yeah, actually, I mentioned it in this presentation, but I'm going to talk about it in more details during the next session. So, yeah. Thank you.
So thank you very much. And as always, the sessions are recorded. So we will see with you, and of course, the result of the session. And we can later post it on our YouTube channel, so we can then spread the word and better ways of Scrum application to drive real value.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And so everyone, thank you for your attending, and we will be back in 1 hour after a cool break. So
see you soon, everyone.
See you soon. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.